Okay, so now let's try to finish our group by clause. So, as I said, group by, either we have to include all the columns in our group by statement, which is not very practical because we didn't do nothing. If we group by all of the columns, we will have all of the rows. Or either we need to use this in a aggregate function. As I said, if we put here payment ID, we see here this error must either appear in the group by clause or be used in an aggregate function. So for example, let's think of these two scenarios. I want to find all the numbers of unique payments done by each customer. Now I want to see how many payments does this customer did and this and this and so on. Now this is something that you will find in a real case scenario, right? So I will need to group by this column, and in our case this column, and in our case I need to go to our to all of the other rows and just count them. I need to see, okay, so this specific customer has 2 rows attached to them. So I will need to apply an aggregate function that will count my rows into one single value. Now you already learned this, right? With count. So let's see how we use this. So basically I will delete this. Let me first do the group by statement, and now I will just add another column and type count and start from payment. And what this will do, it will merge, let's say, all of my columns for a specific customer into one single value. It will compute and it will apply that aggregate function. So for example, this customer ID has 20 rows attached to him. So basically this customer ID has 20, let's say, payments. For example, let's select start from payment, where customer ID is equal with 184. Now we will see, we will have 20 rows like this. So what this count does, this aggregate function, is it took all of these rows and compute them into one single value. And this is what it basically does to every group by, to every unique customer. Now this is something that you will have in a real case scenario. So this is how we use group by clause with aggregate functions. Now this is the count function, which we already learned. Now let's see another real case scenario. Let's say I want to find the total amount spent by each customer. So in our case, in this PowerPoint presentation, this customer ID has spent this plus this, and I just approximate these values, and you have here 10. So in this customer ID 342 has spent, I don't know, $7, and let's say the other 343 has spent $11. So this is something that you'll want to know in a real case scenario, maybe in an application. You want to see how many values, which is the total of amount spent by each customer. Now how would we do this? So basically I will need to group by the customer ID, and these values I need to compute them into one single value. So which function should I use? You already learned this. It's the sum function, and I can put sum and put a column here. So basically it does what we saw in our PowerPoint presentation. So for example, this customer ID has spent 80.80, let's say, dollars, euros, whatever, doesn't matter the currency, and so on, so on. Now let's go and see other two examples. Let's say I want to find the first payment done by each customer. So something like this. I need to group by customer ID, and I need to go into my column payment date. We have here a payment date. Let me from payment we have here a payment date, and I need to select for this customer ID, let's say, where customer ID is equal with 341. I need to select the least date, the minimum date. So how would I do this? Let's say, how would I do this? I will just group by customer, and then I will need to compute all these dates into one single value, or specifically select the most recent date, not the most recent, the oldest date in our case. So I will do something like this. Select customer ID from payment, group by customer ID, and here I will apply an aggregate function, which is the function min payment date. And as you can see here, we have this customer ID, which the first payment he did on this specific date. And let's go into the other example. So let's say we want to find the max amount spent by each customer. So what is the largest purchase, let's say. I want you to pause the video and try for yourself how would you do this. So you have to go by customer ID, and then you will have to compute these two values and to find the maximum amount of them. So in our case is this, and this. So try to do this on your own. Okay, if you didn't manage, let's try to do together. So what I want to do is just apply max and amount. So basically this is how I found the largest purchase for every customer, and we see here all these values. As you can see here, group by is very practical when you combine with an aggregate function. Now you can use an aggregate function, and so on, but it depends on your use case. Now in our next video you'll have an exercise, and it will be a little bit complicated, but try to think if you can do it. And we'll use group by and aggregate functions and also joins. And if you don't manage the solution, you will see in the next video.